Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Great D's of Coronavirus Part 5. We're already 5 parts in, and I think this is actually going to be the final segment of this sub-mini series of great debates, great decisions, great deciders, the Torah, the Great D's of coronavirus. I believe this is going to be the final installment, although there is a lot more to talk about. But there's also a lot of other Torah that we need to talk about. So we'll see. Maybe we'll come back to more of these shilas if more issues become prevalent. But I wanted to end the series tonight with some of the halachos related to when a minyan is unavailable, as we experienced for a number of months in reality of not having minyanim available, not being able to not just have minyan in shul, but to gather minyanim. And we're going to see that there are a number of different situations that are discussed in the poskim. I'd like to focus on, though, one of those situations in particular, probably the one that is most weighty in that of what to do with regard to a wedding during this time period, and to see the way that the poskim handled this issue in real time is fascinating. I think I mentioned in the past the story that Rav Shai Shechter of Young Israel of Woodmere asked his father, my Rebbe Rav Hershel Shechter, as we're going to see tonight, his response on this issue of not being able to gather a minyan. But his son asked him, he said, these serious issues you have to paskin on. I mean, when do you have time to prepare all these things? You're basically on the phone all day answering shilas. I mean, I spoke to Rav Shachta this week for 20 minutes, and I'm not the only one. I'm one of hundreds of rabbanim in the country that are calling Rav Shachter. And so where do you have time to work out all the answers, to prepare all these things? So he didn't say in a haughty way, but he just responded to his son. And he said, well, I've been preparing for the last 80 years, right? and who would have imagined that we would have to have had these types of weddings? This picture was a famous picture going around. This was, right in the beginning of shutdowns, when shutdowns were taking place. And I think that at the time, Israel already instituted their mandate not to allow more than gatherings of 10 people, which posed issues for weddings and the like. And, people had these massive weddings planned. But then there was this one couple that had a great idea. In the supermarkets, they still allowed, I think, gatherings of about 100. So they decided to just get married in the supermarket. Take a look at this video from Yeshivas Merkaz Harav. Unbelievable. Look, everyone dancing up on their balcony like that. It's amazing. And down below is just whoever needs to be there, right? And this is exactly what was taking place, not just throughout Israel, but this is what was taking place throughout the United States. I know that there was, I was zocha to be, at a couple of these unique types of weddings. But I really want to get to the question at hand, which is that, well, what about when the mandate was in place where you were not able to have a gathering of 10 people? We know, as the Gemara tells us, that a chuppah really should have 10 people there. The Gemara says the following. Take a look right over here. The Gemara says, Gufa Amar of Nachman, Amar li Huna bar Nasan, Tana, Minayin lebirchas chasanim ba'asara. How do we know that birchas chasanim, which is the sheva brachos that take place at a chuppah, how do you know that needs 10 people? Now the Gemara says that with regard to the first part of marriage, which weddings have two parts to them. There is the kiddushin or the erusin. Kiddushin is, I guess, for lack of a good English translation, because I don't really think there is one, would be betrothal, where it's kind of like a more intensive form of engagement, where you're not just proclaiming the fact that you are committing yourselves to marrying each other, but you are actually creating a chalos, you're creating an establishment, you're creating a status of the two of you being married, but not yet living in the same home. Then you move into the next stage, which is nisuin, and that is actually when you join in together as husband and wife living in the same home. There's a whole discussion in the Rishonim how nisuin takes place, that second form takes place, but the Mishnah really tells us already how kiddushin takes place, and that the Mishnah tells us is one of three ways, either kesef, shtar, ubia, which is either through living together or to give some sort of a document that says that hareya mikudeshesli, that you were married to me, or through kesev or shava kesev, through monetary value. And today we do that with a ring. So that's kiddushin. Erisin, nisuin, is a whole discussion exactly how that happens. Today we do all of it, and that's where the chuppah comes into place, because the Rama says it's standing under a chuppah. The Rambam says it's yichud, which is being secluded together, and Tosos in Yuman Daf Yud Gimel says it's doing bedekin, and that's why when you go to a chasana today, when you go to a wedding, you're going to see all of those different things happen. They stand under a chuppah, they have yichud together, they go into seclusion together, they do the bedekin. All of those things take place. However, the Gemara does tell us, though, that there is not just the chuppah that needs to happen, but there are also brachos that need to take place, and that's the sheva brachos. The sheva brachos that take place under the chuppah are really, really, really critical. The Gemara says, first of all, you need a minyan. Continue, the Gemara, take a look at the Gemara later on. The Gemara says, Mevarchen birchas chasanim bebeis chasanim, that there's an obligation to make the sheva brachos. And Rashi tells us, when is it that we make these sheva brachos? Rashi tells us we make the sheva brachos right over here. Rashi says, bebeis chasanim kishenichnesa, where did Rashi go? Kishenichnesa lechupas nisuin. Under the chuppah, these 7 blessings need to be recited. The Gemara later tells us exactly what these 7 blessings are. We don't have time to get into all of the laws of sheva brachos, but we see from the Gemara, black on white, the necessity to have sheva brachos under the chuppah. And it seems as though sheva brachos needs to happen with a minyan. Not only is it that there's this mandate to have sheva brachos, and that sheva brachos needs to have a minyan with it, and you need to have 10 men also, but we take a look at the following brisa in Maseches Kala Rabasi. There's a group of these very, very small Masechtas. They're called Masechtas Ketanos, these small tractates that are brisas that exist at the end of Maseches Avodah Zarah, kind of tucked away in the middle of Shas somewhere. You have these small statements from Chazal. And our rabbis teach us, not just is this a mandate, but it's a severe mandate. It's a critical mandate to have these sheva brachos, because if you don't, there's going to be a consequence. Take a look at what the Gemara, at what the brisa says. Kala below bracha, that if you have a kala, if you have a girl who was under the chuppah, but below bracha, however, she never received the birchas chasanim, she never received the sheva brachos. Basically, the couple did chuppah. They either were in seclusion, they stood under the chuppah, they did the bedekin, they did everything. And they did everything kedasu kedin, with all the chumras, with all the stringencies, except they didn't say the sheva brachos. Asura leba'ala kinida. It is prohibited for the two of you to live together as if she is a nida, as if she's menstruating, she's impure, it completely usser. The Gemara is the Bryce is equating it over here to an isser kares. I mean, this is serious stuff. Without sheva brachos, and it would be prohibited to live together. So then, hold on one second. What would be? Can you imagine? You imagine the having to paskin on this. Can you imagine? You have a couple ready to get married, and then the government throws a mandate at you saying that you're not allowed to have gatherings of 10 people. What are they going to do? Okay, to have the eidim, to have the witnesses, fine, that's not a problem. To have a Masadar Kedushin, okay, that's still good. Chas and Kala, Masadar Kedushin, 2 witnesses, but that's it. You can't have an additional 10 people on top of that. What are you going to do? And even if you want to include everyone else on top of that, still the Kala is one of those 10 people. She doesn't count for the minyan. So what are you going to do? You need to have the Sheva Brachos. Otherwise, it's a Sur Labala Kenida. And it's a machlokes in the Rishonim whether or not this is an Isser D'Oraisa or an Isser D'Rabbanan. There is one opinion quoted by the Shita Mekubetzes. Rabbi Tzal Ashkenazi was a very late Rishon, some consider an early Achron, who collected statements from the Rishonim that were never formally published as a separate commentary on Shas, and collected them as a commentary on Shas called the Shita Mekubetzes, which he's basically collecting opinions. And that's the name of the work, the collection of opinions. And over there in Ksubas on Daf Zion, on the daf we just saw, on the page we just saw, he quotes from the Ravid that this is an Isser D'Oraisa. This is a biblical prohibition. Most Rishonim disagree. But regardless, this is serious. You can create a prohibition if they were to live together without Sheva Brachos. So what's the story? Well, as we just mentioned, when it comes to the first part of the marriage, we know that the Shulchan Aruch tells us that Birchas Erusin Trichan Asara, better that you have 10 people, lichatchila, for the first part, for giving the ring. But it's not necessary. However, made very clear by everything we've just seen that it's an absolute necessity to have a minyan for Sheva Brachos. And this is exactly what it says in Shulchan Aruch, Ein mevarchen birchas chasanim ela ba'asara, that you need to have 10 men present for Sheva Brachos. So again, we have to deal with the question of, so what happened in a scenario where 10 people were not allowed to be brought together? What are we going to do with this? So if you take a look at the Rambam begins to shed light on how we can deal with this issue. Because really we have to ask ourselves, what is it that the Brisa really meant when it said that a kala below bracha asur labala kanida? That having Sheva Brachos is so critical that if you don't have it and you live together with one another, that it's going to be a promiscuous relationship. I mean, what is the Brisa really trying to tell us? So the Rambam takes a stance over here. The Rambam writes the following. He says, Hama'aris es ha'isha. Let's say 2 people become betrothed. Let's say they only did Sheva Brachos, but they never did the chuppah, or they never did bedeken, or they never were secluded together, or what the Ran says, they never actually went to live in the same home together. They only did the Sheva Brachos. Says the Rambam, Adayin arusahi. She's still only your betrothed, meaning the 2 of you are still not fully married, even though you did the Sheva Brachos, but you never actually went to live together. So then the marriage is not complete. So the Rambam is making a statement here. He's saying that the most critical aspect of the wedding is actually when you go into seclusion together, when you go to live together. Continues the Rambam and he writes, now what about Iris Vikanas Lechuppah? Let's say you do everything. You do the Kiddushin. You give her the ring, Hariat Mikudeshes Li, beautiful, Mikudeshes, 2 witnesses, beautiful, Mazel Tov. The rabbi gives a beautiful drasha, he gives a beautiful bracha to the Chassan and Kal. Amazing, beautiful, Mazel Tov. Under the chuppah, the music starts playing in Mishkachech. He steps on the glass and they go into the Yichud room. Whoops, what did we miss? Sheva Brachos. They did everything else except for Sheva Brachos. What about in that scenario? V'lo birach birchas chasanim, they didn't do the Sheva Brachos. Says the Rambam, Harei zo nisua gemura, completely married. Completely married. And a number of days from now, you can go back and give the Sheva Brachos later. Not a problem. You'll give the Sheva Brachos another time. But are you married? 100%. What? How could you be married? What? Did the Rambam not know this brisa we just saw? Where's that brisa? Where the brisa said that Asura Labala Kanida. What are you talking about? How could you be married? This is a promiscuous relationship. They never had the Sheva Brachos. How can the Rambam have the conscience to be able to say that they're complete Harezu Nesua Gemura? They're completely married. How? And then they'll go back and have the Sheva Brachos another time. So how could that be? So the Birkas Shmuel, Reb Shmuel ben Uri Shraga Fivish. He was a Rav in Poland. I forget exactly what part of Poland, but he was a major 17th century posek. He has a running commentary on where the Shulchan Aruch, Rav Yosef Karo, has all of the laws of marital law in Eben HaEzer, in the 4th volume of Shulchan Aruch. The Beis Shmuel, who is this Polisher 17th century Achron, has a running commentary that has really been accepted as the bottom line halacha for all marital law, the Beis Shmuel. It's an amazing work. And he explains the Rambam as follows. He writes the following. He says, hold on, how did the Rambam miss the brisa? So says the Beis Shmuel, it must be v'tzarich lomer d'sfira leila harambam. It must be that the Rambam assumes haditana b'mesachas kala, that what it says in the brisa, when the brisa says kala b'lo bracha asur labala kenida, that when the brisa says that when the two of them are married but they did not have the brachos, that they're usher to each other, it's not referring to the actual bracha of the Sheva Brachos. What's it referring to? Hainu chuppah. No, it's referring to the entire second part. It's referring to the entire Nisuin process, the chuppah, actually coming into seclusion together, or standing under the chuppah, as the Rama says, or all of those different processes we went through before that we do at all of our weddings. All of those procedures, if you're missing the actual chuppah, then if you were to live together, that would be problematic. However, if you just miss the Sheva Brachos themselves, just those blessings, then no, there would not be a prohibition for the two of you to live together. And when you look through the Gemara, when the Gemaras talk about the Sheva Brachos and the Rishonim's explanation of it, really the whole purpose of it is really as a moment of like Shevach v'hodah, as a moment to give gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to bestow, beautiful blessings upon the Chassan and Kala, but it's not a transaction. It's not it's not very technical in the sense of that, how it is affecting the marriage. The marriage is being affected, number one, by the kiddushin of giving the ring, and number two, when the two of you actually go into seclusion together, when you start living together as husband and wife. But the brachos are not technical in the sense of the acquisition, and that's at least the way the Rambam is understanding. Definitely the way the Beis Shmuel is explaining the Rambam. So right away, right off the bat, we can hang our hats on the Rambam and say that, well, in a scenario where it's impossible to have a minyan, it's in a scenario where there's a mandate, we're not allowed to have a minyan together. So, okay, fine, we don't have a choice, but Baruch Hashem, the Rambam told us that the whole mandate of Sheva Brachos, while it's a beautiful thing and a necessary thing, however, it's not going to get in the way of the marriage actually taking effect. And you could still live together as husband and wife, regardless of whether or not there were Sheva Brachos. And there's a principle in halacha called Shas Hadchak K'di'eved Dami, that if it's a Shas Hadchak is a pressing situation. When there's a pressing situation, so we treat that like b'di'eved. B'di'eved means, kind of like after the fact, where we know the way things are supposed to be done, But then we also know that, well, if after the fact this happened, what would the halacha be? I'll give you a great example. A great example of bidiyeved, of that, I know I shouldn't have done this, but once it was done, is it okay? An example would be, let's say, how one is supposed to shake lulav and esrog. Okay, there's a right way to do it, and there's a wrong way to do it. Okay, there's the most ideal way to do it, and the less ideal way to do it. Okay, the type of esrog you use. There's a gorgeous esrog, and there's one that's just cutting it. So in that scenario, well, should you have done it that way? Probably not. But once it's done, okay, fine. So there's nothing you can really do about it at this point. You don't have to worry about, you've definitely fulfilled your mitzvah, at least in a secondary fashion. So in times of distress, we treat secondary fashions, the secondary situations, as lichatchilas, as it's just as good as doing it the regular way. So this would be an application of that. Would the Rambam say lichatchila you're supposed to have shavuot brachos? Obviously, no question about it. However, in a scenario where shavuot brachos can't take place, he still is taking the approach that the wedding could be completed in its full form. Not all agree to this. This is not agreed to by the Rashba, and the Beis Shmuel makes that very clear. The Beis Shmuel says, "B'makom deleka asara." Let's say a scenario where you can't have 10 people together, which is our scenario. I mean, isn't this amazing? I get I'm mamish and blown away by this every single time that we look into these shilas we've been discussing over the last 5 weeks. It's all there in the poskim. It's all there in our original sources. Who would have ever thunk of a scenario where we wouldn't be able to have 10 people together for a wedding? Obviously, I'm sure there were, times in history, obviously during the Holocaust, or obviously during pogroms and things like that. Okay, fine. Obviously, this is not the first time in history. But as Marty Stauber said so beautifully, we're seeing halacha taking place in real time right now. We're seeing the poskim deal with things in real time. And it just, and also in the sheer volume of how many scenarios like this are taking place, is just unbelievable. B'makom deleka asara, says the Beis Shmuel, that in a place where you don't have 10 people and you don't have the ability to put together a minyan, ein la'asos nesuim, better to not do the wedding. Chen kasev harashba. This is what the Rashba writes. Rabbeinu Shlomo ben Aderes, the chief rabbi of Toledo, buddies with the Rush, who we've discussed in the past. Rabbeinu Asher ben Yechiel, who was a Rav in Frankfurt, and then in 1301 moved to Toledo, to Spain to live out the rest of the last 25 years of his life, and they became very close, the Rashba and the Rush. Ubepiske Ma'ari, Cholek al Zev, HaBeis Yosef, Hiskim L'Divrei Rush. The Beis Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Karo, agrees with the Rashba that better to not have a wedding if you're not going to be able to have 10 people. So according to the Rashba, this would be an issue. However, points out the Beis Shmuel, Ubedarke Moshe, the Ramah, Kasav, Moshe Isserlis, the chief rabbi of Krakow, Kasav ein dvarav nirim. It says that I don't really understand why. Ela eina brachos ma'akfin. The brachos the sheva brachos don't get in the way of the wedding actually taking place and coming to fruition. Rather, obviously, miu lechatchila yesh liyizar lo hadar acher asara. Obviously, it's better to have 10 people. There's no question about it. It's a mandate to have 10 people in order so you can have the sheva brachos. But as an absolute necessity, no, says the Ramah and the Rambam. If it's impossible, basically, to put together a minyan, it's like a b'di'eved, kamash kasav trumas hadeshen, Torah gadol, have k'di'eved, u'birchas. Okay, fine. And then he says, in Birchas Erisin, certainly you don't need 10. But the Beis Shmuel is making it extremely clear that I'm poskening along with the Trumas Hadeshen, along with the Ramah and the Rambam that we saw from the Beis Shmuel before, his understanding of the Rambam. It's very clear that majority of the poskim are assuming that while, of course, it's a necessity under normal circumstances to have sheva brachos with a minyan, however, in a scenario where a minyan cannot be put together, so then you skip the sheva brachos, and as the Rambam said, you'll give the sheva brachos at another time when things are normal. but you can move forward with the wedding, skipping over the Sheva Brachos. And this is how the Nodeb Yehuda, Rabbi Cheskel Landau, lived from 1713 to 1793, was the Rav in Prague. He was one of the major poskim. He was the Rebbe of the Chai Adam, or Avram Danzig, who became a mechutin of the Gra and wrote the Sefer Chai Adam and Nishmas Adam and Binas Adam and Chachmas Adam, which became like the Bible in Europe. Said Rav Shechter to us many times that the Chai Adam really is like the bottom line halacha, certainly for Ashkenazi Jews from Eastern Europe, from Poland and Lithuania, no question about it, that the Chai Adam is the halacha sefer. Definitely up to the Mishnah Berurah, and even the Mishnah Berurah mostly will pass like the Chai Adam. And the Chai Adam was one of the main students of Rabbi Cheskel Landau, the chief rabbi of Prague. Is unbelievable posek, and he wrote a sefer called the Nodeb Yehuda. And there, in his response of the Nodeb Yehuda, he says, "Mikol makom kan shekfar birech." He deals. Someone sent him a question where it wasn't a coronavirus type of wedding where there wasn't a choice but you couldn't have a minyan, therefore you can have Shev Brachos. But the shaila that he got was that the Rav made a big mistake, and the Masada Kedushin just forgot the Shev Brachos. So in such a scenario where the Rav just forgot to make the Sheva Brachos. So then, what is the halacha? So he has some sharp words that he uses to describe this Masara Kedushin and whether or not this person, this Rav, is in the right line of work. He says bavadei hedyot kazeh, that this simpleton. He says the big avon. He uses some strong language over there. But then he says, okay, now practically, how am I going to paskin over here? He says, "Mekomokom kan shikfar birech," since in such a scenario it's already done. Ela shelo haya sham asara ze eno ma'akev b'di'eved also habracha af b'li asara. He says that if you don't have a minyan for the Sheva Brachos and the Sheva Brachos were made, okay, fine, there's nothing you can really do about it. So, the brachos didn't really count, and okay, so it's already done. Nothing you can really do about it. He quotes the Beis Shmuel we saw before, that says, that most poskim agree that, while of course it is a necessity under normal circumstances, something that we obviously should do in a normal scenario. However, under extreme circumstances, it is not going to get in the way of the wedding coming to fruition. And this is exactly what Rav Shechter paskined when faced with this shaila in, he signed it over here, Zion Nisan, right before Pesach. He obviously received a question that there was a wedding that needed to take place, but they cannot have a minyan at the wedding. So he says the following. He says, Sakana Gedolahi Liasasif Chaburas Anashim. He says that we know that there's a great danger to get together with large groups right now. Shema Yaviru Hamachala Me'echel Lechavero, because maybe you're going to spread the disease between each other. So God forbid, we don't want to do that. And he goes through exactly what we just pointed out. He thinks that for sure there is not a necessity to have a minyan at the wedding. He then does point out, I think he wrote this because it was right before Pesach. Remember, we pointed out before, we actually don't think we did point this out yet, that there is another statement found in Chazal, in the Yerushalmi, that seems to equate this prohibition of living with your loved one before you're married. And it's not in the realm of actual husband and wife getting married, but it's actually in the realm of eating matzah on Erev Pesach. The Yerushalmi writes that anyone who eats matzah be'erev Pesach it's kibol arusaso bebeis chamav. It's like you're living with your betrothed before you actually get married. That's what it says. That's what it says in the Yerushalmi. That because we want to retain the taste of the matzah, we want to be something that we enjoy. We can't, just wait a little bit. You'll be married soon. You'll be married to the matzah soon. Okay, that you just wait a little bit. I know you're excited to have your crunchy matzah and to make your jokes about whether or not it was just as crispy as last year, less crispy as last year, more burnt than this year. All right. Okay, just wait a little bit, then you'll be able to eat your matzah. But to eat matzah on Erev Pesach, says the Yerushalmi, it is like you're living with your wife before you're actually married. And he points out from the Pri Megadim, Rav Yosef Ta'omim was an amazing contemporary of the Nodab Yehuda. He was never actually a formal Rav. His job, his line of work was that he was a Melamed Dardiki. He was an elementary school teacher. He taught little children, Aleph Beis, Chumash and Rashi. He actually published his own Chumash with, an easy way for children to be able to learn to read the Chumash. That's what he did. He taught children, even though he was this massive posek who wrote, volumes of svarim as commentaries to the Shulchan Aruch that we learn in yeshivas today, and everyone tries to learn the words of the Pri Megadim. But he was a Melamed Dardiki. He taught nursery school. So the Pri Megadim points out, he says that the same way that a kala tricha sheva brachos needs the sheva brachos lahatira labala to get married, kach b'dei le'echol es hamatzah, so too when it comes to eating matzah, being in heter shall sheva brachos mikodem, you need the sheva brachos. And Rav Shefter goes on to point out what are the sheva brachos before eating matzah. So he says, number 1, Brei Pri Hagafen, number 2, Kiddush, number 3, Shechianu, number 4, the bracha of Asher Ga'alanu that takes place at the end of Magid, number 5, Al Natilas Yadayim, number 6, Hamotzi, and number 7, the bracha of Motzi Matzah, the bracha of Alachilas Matzah. And those Sheva brachos, those 7 blessings, finally will allow you to be united with the matzah. It's a beautiful idea. Rabbi Soloveitchik used to point out that this could be the reason why, one of the classic questions you'll ask the kids at the Seder is when you get up to Kadesh Orchatz. So you get up to Orchatz and you say to the kids, okay, kids, what do we do now? And everyone says, oh, you go wash your hands. And you say, well, do we wash our hands with a bracha or we wash our hands without a bracha? And everyone screams out, without a bracha, because you're going to wash. Why are we washing at that point? Because we're about to eat the karpas, which the karpas is wet vegetables. Any wet fruit or vegetables or really grain that becomes wet with one of the liquids that can prepare that food in order to be makabel tuma, which is liquids like honey, blood. The Mishnah says milk, water, or wine. Those 5 liquids. So being that the vegetables become wet, so the rabbis mandated that we wash our hands. Okay, then in order to not transfer tuma, fine. Okay. So the gra, though, which by the way, most people don't realize this, but cookies and milk, you have to wash on. You don't make a bracha, but dipping cookies in milk, you have to wash on that, right? You go to the sink and you wash an apple in the sink, so you have to either dry it very, very well or wash your hands without a bracha. It's a halacha that most people are not accustomed to, as we are like for washing for bed, which is a discussion, for another time why that is. But regardless, the Gra, though, felt as though this mandate of washing upon wet fruits and vegetables was so strong that he felt as though you do need to make a bracha. That you don't wash without a bracha, you wash with a bracha. There was one night of the year, though, that even the Gra would wash without a bracha when he would eat his fruits and vegetables that are dipped. What night? The night of Pesach, for karpas. He would go to wash without a bracha. Why? Because then it wouldn't be 7 brachos, but what would it be? 8 brachos. That's just interesting to point out. Okay. I want to, Baruch Hashem, I personally did not hear of any weddings that a minyan of 10 was not able to happen. It could be because Rav Shechter also, we saw last time, Rav Shechter has the idea of being in a separate room is a problem for Rav Shechter. We've spoken about that in the past. But regarding Baruch Hashem, I personally didn't. It could be that others did hear of weddings that needed to take place with less than 10 people, but they should, if there were, which I'm sure there were, they should be comfortable knowing that at least according to most Rishonim, that is under these circumstances perfectly fine. I want to point out just two other issues that Rav Shechter dealt with regard to not having a minyan. They're very short responsa, but they're important responsa that I'd like to go through together. One is that someone asked Rav Shechter. This was right after Pesach, a couple weeks after Pesach. This is when people, Baruch Hashem, were healing. Unfortunately, some people were very, very, very sick. Some people still are very, very, very sick, and we continue to daven for them. And people were asking Rav Shechter, which is that the Mishnah tells us arba trichim lahodos, that there are 4 people that need to give a proper thanks, to give a Thanksgiving blessing, and included in that is the bracha of Hagomel. That's what we say in shul. If someone was either very, very, very sick, or they were in a dangerous place, so they make the bracha of Hagomel. So in such a scenario where a person was really in the throes of the coronavirus and was extremely ill, they want to be able to make the bracha of Hagomel, except they don't have a minyan available that they can go make the bracha of Hagomel to during. So what is someone to do in that scenario? So Rav Shechter paskin as follows. Well, first of all, he says, well, it depends on how much time you think you'll have before a minyan starts up again. Again, this is during a time where we didn't know how long it would take. It does say in the Shulchan Aruch that lechatchila, that it's best to make the bracha v'gomel within 3 days of either being released from jail, any of those things on the list, be someone healing from being very, very sick, being in a dangerous place. You have 3 days, says the Shulchan Aruch lechatchila. However, the Mishnah Berurah does point out, the Mishnah Berurah does say that b'di'evad, it is okay to go up to 30 days. So Rav Shechter, number one, he said, well, if you think within the next 30 days you're going to have a minyan together, fine, so then you shouldn't worry about it. And he says, if you wait 25 days after, let's say, being released from the hospital, and you still don't see a minyan happening within the next 5 days, so then let's move on to now plan C. Again, plan A is obviously to make the bracha v'gomel within 3 days. Plan B is 30 days. Now, what's plan C? Plan C is, well, there's no minyan, so what do you do? So take a look at what Rav Shechter says. He says, Im kain nira. He says, sheyesh levarich derech Zoom. He says, so you make birchas hagomel over Zoom. Chada, he says, number one, the alpi pshuto, because according to the most basic way to understand this bracha, ein hatzorech la'asara b'toras davar shebekdusha, the obligation of having 10 together for the bracha of Hagomel is not because Hagomel is a davar shebekdusha, is a holy prayer that requires a minyan for, like Kedusha or Kaddish or Baruchu. And we discussed that a few weeks ago when we discussed the, being able to do, these balcony or porch minyanim and the like. But Birchas Hagomel for sure is not a davar shebekdusha. And therefore, he says, Ella, b'toras, then what is the purpose of having a minyan? Rather, it's b'toras parsume nisa. It's in order to publicize the miracle, the hodah b'rabim, in order to give thanks in public. So then, that could be accomplished even over Zoom. The Yosha Kol Hasara, Makshivim lo derech Zoom, as long as everyone is connected over Zoom, or derech ha-telephone, b'conference call, or through a conference call, says Rav Shechter, you are able to, again, this is plan C, be able to make Birchas Hagomel, because It is because it is the requirement of a minyan is only for parsume nisa purposes, to publicize the miracle, which you can do through these online platforms, or these technological platforms. He points out that the Bir Halacha seems to hint to this as well. The Chavetz Chaim seems to hint to this as well. So that's one another application of this, of the situation we're in, where minyanim were not able to be convened. So so this was another application of that. But Rosh Hashanah Paskin, that you were able to do Birchas Chasanim, Birchas Hagomel over Zoom. The last very small response I want to look at together is the question that was posed to many Rabbanim, myself included a few times, with regard to baby namings. Bris Milah, baby namings, where you don't have a minyan. So generally speaking, the way that baby namings work is that, the general custom is that we name the baby either at a bris milah, or for a girl, we do it during Kriyas HaTorah. And during that time, it's an auspicious time, and therefore we use the opportunity to name the child and give brachos to the child and to the parents. Says Rosh Hashanah, Nagu lomar misha berach v'likro l'shem b'libas shem b'kesher l'aliyah l'Torah. He says that the general custom is that we give the name to a child during an aliyah, to a girl during, when the father gets an aliyah. There are different customs for this. In dafka b'Shabbos harishona, do we do it during the first Shabbos, or afilu b'yemosachol, or even during the week? I named all of my kids during the week, on either Monday or Thursday. Both of my girls I named during the week, not on Shabbos. However, now during the situation we're in, we don't have a minyan together in order to read the Torah. So then what are we supposed to do? We're all sitting inside of bibidut. We're all sitting inside of quarantine. He says, Davar pashadhu she'ein zeh ma'akev. He says, certainly this is not going to get in the way. The person is not going to be nameless until minyanim start again. Rather, ve'ein lahamtin ad la'achar she'netze min ha'sakana. We don't have to wait until this situation is gone. Ella kovim hahorim shem lebitam. Rather, the parents can just simply call them by the name that they were planning on giving them. V'korim la bishma. They start calling her their name. And then you can give a mishaberach. I did with someone a mishaberach over the phone. Over Zoom, but we didn't have a whole minyan together. We didn't have a Kriyas Torah. We started calling her by her name. And then he even points out, and this is already a tshuva from Rav Moshe Feinstein. It's also discussed in the Sefer Nishmas Avram, written by Rabbi Dr. Abraham. It's first name, last name, same name situation. He was one of the three closest students of Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. The three closest students, arguably the three closest students of Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, were the Shmir Shabbos Kehochasa, Rabbi Yeshua Neuwirth, who wrote an amazing compendium of the laws of Shabbos. Rav Avigdor Nebenzahl, who is the Rav of the old city of Yerushalayim. It's an unbelievable Talmud Chacham. And the third closest student was someone who was really one of the trailblazers in establishing modern psak halacha with regard to modern medicine. And he wrote a 4-volume work called the Nishmas Avram, where he discusses some of the practical halachos that come up with regard to medical halacha and shaila. So he has a beautiful sefer called the Nishmas Avram. And this is also discussed by Rav Moshe Feinstein with regard to what about a child, of a boy, that a bris milah, let's say, needs to be pushed off because the baby is not well. So what do you do about giving a name? So Rav Moshe already paskin. Rav Moshe said that you're supposed to give him a name right away, even if it's within the days before his bris milah. Meaning, let's say the baby, unfortunately, God forbid, is is sick and the bris milah needs to be pushed off from 8 days to who knows how long. So says Rav Moshe, you don't even wait till 8 days to give the name. You give the name right away in order so that Kedei sheyuchlu hispalu avuro, in order so that they could daven for him. And says Rav Shechter, even though in the Sefer Mate Moshe, which also was written by the Chai Adam, he says that, it's better to give the name, during the bris milah, but regardless of that, during this, during times where it's impossible to do that, so then you can give the name right away. However, we still were able to do bris milahs, because bris milahs you don't need a minyan for. You just need the father of the baby, you need a sandik, and you need the moel, and really the father could be the sandik. Even the moel could be the sandik. So you really just need just the parents, the baby, and the moel, and that's all you need. So then, therefore, for male children, we were waiting obviously till the bris milah, since we were still able to, Baruch Hashem, bli ayin hara, able to perform bris milahs. However, for the girls, we were giving names right away. These are, like I said, just a few very interesting shilas that came up, very, very practical shilas that were coming up all the time during this period, and all having to do with the fact that, unfortunately, we did not have minyanim together. Baruch Hashem, things have changed. Baruch Hashem, we do have minyanim together now, and hopefully we have to daven, especially here in California, as we see numbers going up. We really, really have to daven hard that it's almost, it would be davening for a nace for people not to get affected, but that if people are going to get affected, that it really does not affect them too much, that we don't see any more, God forbid, deaths, and hopefully that this magefa, that this plague is rid from our midst as soon as possible. All right, we will stop here. I'm happy to hang on for a couple of minutes if anyone has any questions. Go and mute yourselves, of course.
Very